But British Cycling has finally made a decent decision. They've actually said transgender women can no longer race with women in the women's cycling events. They'll have their own open area where they can go and race against other men, which seems normal to me. Seems like finally athletics is catching up with reality.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, you know, again, this is another one of these things. How did it get this far?
Right.
And I think when these, you know, when issues about transgender athletes competing in female events kind of broke the surface of last year, I think, wasn't it? I think many of us thought, well, why don't the women boycott these events? I think collectively, actually, women have more power than they realise here because, you know, it's just a situation that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. It's so demoralising for women, and it's so destructive, actually, to women's sport. It's so demoralising to young girls, actually, as well. And, you know, it's something I feel very passionately about with two very sporty little girls. That actually preserving their sense of pride and their ability to compete against other athletes who are their equal is really, really important. So I think this is long overdue, and you just have to ask, you know, where have all these governing bodies in cycling and athletics and rowing, you know, what have they been doing for the last few years to let it get this far?
Well, they all seem to be sort of like rabbits caught in the headlights, don't they? They're so worried about offending people. We had Alex Salmond in earlier on who was saying, you know, these MPs like Ed Davey and Keir Starmer who can't identify what a woman is and think that some women can have a penis. And you're kind of going, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just say that a woman is an adult human female? Why can't you just say that? But they can't.
No, and I think, you know, we get ourselves in just such a terrible mess as a society by not being brave enough. And that's what it is, actually, Mike. It's a lack of courage. And, of course, different context, but it's exactly the same in the schools. You know, the creep, and it's been this gradual creep of this very pernicious gender ideology that actually no one will, you know, it's being pushed by a very small minority, but actually it's a majority who are too scared to stand up against it. So instead we have this, you know, subservience to political correctness, and the cost of that is safeguarding. And, you know, it's a safeguarding issue in sport. It's sort of leading to the destruction of women's sport. And in schools, it is actually a clear safeguarding issue where, because we won't say, actually, this is ridiculous, our children should not be taught this nonsense, they are being taught nonsense. They are being, you know, children with clear mental health issues, many of us would say, are being affirmed in different genders and led on a track to surgicalisation and medicalisation. And as a society, we've got to be brave enough about saying, actually, there are lines, there are some biological realities, and that is the way it is.
Yeah, and as parents, you know, we have not only a responsibility but a duty to our own children to take care of them, regardless of what goes on in school. And I understand that, you know, in some instances you give your child to a school and you expect them to look after that child while they're in the school. But some of the things that are going on, for example, teachers saying that they won't tell parents if a child has decided to transgender, or if a child has kind of started saying things that might suggest that that's what they're thinking of doing, and the teachers say, oh no, we can't tell the parents. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it's dangerous, and it rather inverts, or at least undermines, the whole basis of whistleblowing law, because obviously this whole idea is, you know, it's a head teacher called Mike Fairclough who's talked a lot about this and written a lot about this, that, you know, if you are concerned from the point of view of a member of the teaching staff, if you're concerned about a safeguarding issue, you have to be able to have a safe space almost in which to voice your concerns. I mean, you know, that is the essence of legal protections we give to whistleblowers in this country. Whereas what we've seen happening with the few teachers who have stood up to say, no, actually, I'm not going to call a child by, you know, different pronouns without speaking to the parents. I'm not going to call my class they, my class of all girls they. That actually these teachers have been sanctioned, and in some cases they've lost their jobs. So it really is, I think, quite a serious safeguarding failure. And I think we'll look back in years to come, or not even years, months maybe to come, at many of these examples and just think we've lost our way, really, as a society.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And it hasn't been helped by some of these politicians who have refused to sort of, you know, make that courageous leap of truth as well, and just to say what is actually, you know, biologically the case. You know, I don't understand it. But just going back to Parliament, finally, COVID inquiry, interesting week for them. They've basically said they want to have a look at all these WhatsApp messages. I mean, God knows how they're going to find the time to study them all. We'll be doing it for about 10 years at this rate. But they're saying they might actually charge people criminally if they don't hand over their WhatsApp messages. Surely a lot of these cabinet ministers are just going to erase them, aren't they?
Well, I did wonder that this morning on my bike, actually.
There you go.
About this,
Hope you didn't shout at any motorists.
I did. Oh, we are never going to agree on this. I would love to talk to you properly about this. But
Well,
yeah, for now.
do you know what? We can do it next week because Ride London is on this weekend, which is going to basically completely and utterly stultify the great city of London for an entire day, where all these bozos cycle about, pretending they're, prolonging their own lives.
Well, Ride London might not be the answer, but cycling is the way forward. It is the future. So get with the programme.
Well, when you see my car, you'll understand why I don't like cycling.
Back to the COVID inquiry.
Yes.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think brilliant. Go for it, Lady Hallett. Finally, the COVID inquiry is showing some mettle here. Get the WhatsApps. I mean, I don't know. Can they delete them? I'd have thought they probably can't.
Well, they can, no, because Lord Bethel did exactly that. And in the midst of the whole Matt Hancock scenario with Isabel Oakeshott, and when his WhatsApps became... it turned out Isabel's has actually told us that there's a whole chunk of time that just disappeared out of his WhatsApp altogether. And Lord Bethel apparently claimed that he didn't know when he transferred all of his sort of information and data to his new phone that the WhatsApp messages would disappear. Simply untrue. He's obviously deleted them.
Yeah, I mean, look, huge legal issues, one would have thought. But I think there is a serious point here, actually, which is that for this period, this extraordinary pandemic period, certain members of the cabinet, including Johnson, made a decision to conduct executive business via WhatsApp. So I think it has therefore become a matter of public, and Lady Hallett agrees, apparently, what that business that was conducted by WhatsApp becomes a matter of public interest. Yeah. Surely it needs to be the case. If that's how cabinet meetings were effectively being conducted or bypassed, which we saw very vividly with the Hancock disclosures, they ought to be a matter of public record. And I tell you what, Mike, we have already learned more about the failings of the pandemic response from those Matt Hancock disclosures than I am assuming we may learn from the rest of the COVID inquiry put together.
Absolutely.
So I think they're doing exactly the right thing. I think there ought to be a legal obligation. And yeah, if they refuse to comply, it should be seen as a criminal matter.
Yes, I think that's right. My worry, as I say, is that they can just easily sidestep it by going, oh, well, I don't seem to have my WhatsApps from, 2020 March to, 2021 September. I don't know where they've gone. Nobody can find them. Because the thing about emails and the thing about other communications which the government does log is that they're always there. They can't be erased, but I think WhatsApps can.
Yeah,
and I was told by somebody the other day that an awful lot of MPs have started sending these messages now that disappear. You get the message, you read it, and then it's gone, which is interesting.
I mean, there's a whole other question here about should we be conducting state business via WhatsApp, and actually also partly because of the traceability of it. But there's a bigger question about does WhatsApp and the instantaneous, very snap, messaging that it encourages. And also messaging late at night, messaging after a few glasses of wine. Come on, we've all done that. Is that really the way to make wise decisions?
You'd hope not, wouldn't you?
The evidence of Hancock implies that no, it is the antithesis of good decision making.
Yeah.
So, I think there's a bigger question about how government conducts its business.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to see you, Molly. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the cycling at the weekend. Molly Kingsley, founder of Us For Them and cyclist.